Welcome to Girl Read Your Bible, Sunday School for Adults Who Missed It. I'm Nicole Waltz, your host for this podcast, brought to you by 522gals.com, a website dedicated to personal development and spiritual growth. Please go and check it out and be sure to sign up for our email list. We have some really exciting products coming out that we have been creating and working on that is going to help you with your spiritual journey and help you grow in your walk and just help you get the best version of yourself, become everything you were created to be. I am so excited about some of the things that we have coming up. So please make sure you sign up, join our email list, subscribe, all the things so that you do not miss out on that, because these things are really going to help you. We have been prayerfully working on this for the entire year. So I am really excited about what we have coming up, especially for 2026. So with that said, I want to thank you for joining us, for taking the time. It says a lot. There are so many things that we can be doing with our time, and our time is incredibly valuable. So I want to thank you for taking the time to join me for this podcast, to learn more about the Bible, to dive into the things that are, in fact, eternal. It tells me that you are serious about your spiritual growth and that you understand that the best way to get the most out of life is to know and grow in the Word. It is the eternal stuff that really matters. There's lots of things we can do in our lives, but getting into the Word and understanding the things that God has for us, that is eternal. And that is, to me, the most valuable thing there is. So good job, you. Thank you for joining me. And I am so excited for today's study, today's talk, because we are covering the life of Joseph. And Joseph is one of my favorite historical figures of the Bible. And I know if you've been following me for a while, you know I say that almost every episode. But this one, it's really, really true because I love Joseph. He is such a relatable person, and we can get so much from his story. And I know that a lot of us, especially, have felt some of the things he's going to go through. We can really identify with. His life is going to play out so much worse and more complicated than any of the struggles that I have personally had. But it's still a reminder of when life is unfair, God still shows up, and he can turn the things that have been used to destroy you and used to break you into things that will bless you, into things that will make your life better than you could have imagined. And that's a story I really cling to when life is really unfair. And how many of us have had some really unfair stuff happen in our life? Betrayals, accusations, misinformation, lies about you, just circumstances that fell apart, or disappointments, terrible stuff, rough stuff. And I hate to use the word unfair. Like if my kids come to me and they're complaining about something and they're like, that's just so unfair. I'm like, yeah, life is unfair. Like, do not expect life to be fair. That's going to be your first mistake. That's going to cause you strife in life because you think things are going to be fair or should be fair. There's nothing that says life is fair. No, life is not going to be fair. But sometimes I cannot think of a better word, right? Everything that's happening in Joseph's life, incredibly unfair. I can't think of a better word for that. It's just awful. It's ridiculous. And sometimes there's things that happen to us that, again, incredibly unfair. Even though we know life isn't necessarily supposed to be fair, it still feels like all the more just wrong. Just incredibly wrong stuff. And so because we have this happen, it is incredible to have a figure, a story of someone in the Bible. And there's lots of people where things happen that are really unfair. But Joseph's story takes the cake for me on encouragement for this, because he's going to have some truly awful betrayals and truly terrible things happen to him. And he's going to come out ahead. Spoiler alert, he is going to come out A-okay, but it's going to be a heck of a journey. And so that's something really relatable for a lot of us. And I think that there's a lot of takeaway from Joseph's story. But we are going to start out at the beginning of his story, and he is 17 years old. So we're starting in Genesis 37 today, chapter 37. And we just finished up the life of Jacob. Jacob is his father. That's why it's important to do this stuff chronologically, because we can see how the family is developing and how that what the things that they are learning and the things that they are not learning from their own past mistakes. Because Jacob is making some mistakes with his kids that, frankly, I think he should have been wiser about based on his own history and family struggles that he had with his own brother. And he is still going to be making some bad choices, which is going to cause some havoc in his family and heartbreak for himself. So there's some big takeaways for us right there is examine the things that happened in your own past and try to learn or think about how you could do things differently so that your family is not repeating this cycle of troubles in the same way. So we're going to look at that and we're going to talk about that. So let's get started in chapter 37 of Genesis. So Jacob settled again in the land of Canaan, where his father had lived as a foreigner. Remember, his father was Isaac and his grandfather is Abraham. We talked about all these people. They're very important. This is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often tended his father's flocks. He worked for his half-brothers, the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. See, right here, we're seeing where there's some already kind of getting a hint here that there is problems in the family. Because as you know, you should not be encouraging or raising a tattletale. It looks like that's what's happening. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him and in his old age. And also, friends, because if you remember, it doesn't say this in this particular passage, but if you remember, Joseph is the oldest son of his very beloved wife, Rachel. Rachel's the woman he wanted. Rachel's the woman he worked for 14 years. Rachel is the love of his life, and this is her oldest son. She was only able to bear him two sons. That would be Joseph, right here that we're talking about, and Benjamin, who's significantly younger. In any case, I think that is in large part why Joseph is his favorite, not just because of this old age thing here, but because this is Rachel's son. So one day, Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. And friends, that's this translation. We're reading out of the New Living Translation. But if you were reading other translations, and if you had been to Sunday school, and if you've ever watched a cartoon on the life of Joseph, you would know this beautiful robe is the coat of many colors. And that is very significant because that would have been very rare and very expensive because making colors was more difficult in ancient times. Obviously they still could do it, but it was more complex, and so those things cost more and they were more rare and more valuable. So he got him this very special gift, again showing with the bad parenting, because we can see, first of all, it says Jacob loved Joseph the most, and he got him a special gift, and he's having him report to him on his brother's behavior and what's going on in the fields. These are things that you should not be doing as a parent, and it's going to cause a lot of grief. So pay attention so that you do not make the same mistakes. We can learn the good things to do and the things not to do when we're reading the Bible, because we can see how things play out in these people's lives. We're on verse 4. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. See, they knew it. So that's really like, the bad parenting. They couldn't even say a kind word to him. One night, Joseph had a dream. And when he told his brothers about it, more mistakes, friends, more mistakes. Listen to this dream. He said, "We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain, and suddenly my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine." Come on. Can you picture this playing out? They already don't like him. This is not something you share with people who already do not like you. His brothers responded, "So you think you'll be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dreams, which tells us he's probably had many things to say like this over their life, and the way that he talked about them. So let's talk about Joseph for a minute before we continue. I think Joseph might be a little bit naive for a 17-year-old. I think he had some things in common with his father, Jacob. Remember that Jacob was mama's boy and that he was kind of a trickster. He had some unlikable characteristics and had huge transformation and personal growth through his story, which is why we love Jacob's story. But somewhere in the mix of all that transformation and learning and becoming a better person, because we watched that happen when we went over Jacob's story, he didn't pick up on passing those traits down to his kids because these guys don't get along. They're all working together. He's favoring one son over the others in a very obvious way that his older sons don't even like Joseph. They can't even say a kind word to him. And Joseph is kind of oblivious to this because you have to be in order to keep, I'm guessing, right? Like we have to make assumptions because it doesn't tell us his character. But come on, he's they already don't like him. It's telling us that. And he's telling him about his dreams and they don't like him all the more because of the way he talks about these dreams. Like he just goes on and on. Like the boy can't read the room at all because he just continues to talk about this. He continues to proclaim that he's probably going to be great someday. They're going to all bow down to him. I mean, way to pick a fight with your brothers. It's going to end badly for him in this way. But I don't feel like there's nothing in here or nothing in Joseph's story at all that makes me think that he's in any way manipulative or that he's just trying to be better. Like he's not stuck up. That's not what I'm getting. I'm getting some naivete. And that might be his best characteristic. It would be better for him if he knew when to speak and when to keep things to himself. But because he's not aware of his audience, he kind of is in that place where he just thinks everybody's on his team and everybody likes him. Maybe because his father favors him so much, he thinks the other brothers are kind of just playing around with their sibling rivalry and their distaste for him. Maybe he's a little clueless. Maybe that naivete is what's going to help keep his faith so intact when all the bad things start happening. I don't know. I think it's really peculiar, and I think that Joseph's story tells us something that we could know too. It's not always a good idea to share everything with everyone around you. Not everyone is a supporter of your dreams. Even the things God has planted in your heart that you know are from God. Have you ever shared something with someone and it was kind of crushing because they didn't support you? Like you felt like you heard from God that you were supposed to write a book or start a volunteer organization or host an event or whatever, anything. And the people around you were like, you're not somebody who can do that. Or just discouraging or just whatever. That could come from their own jealousy. That can come from their own insecurities. That can come from their own self-lack. That can come from the fact that they don't like you as much as you think that they like you. And that's always a sad thing to learn. In any case, it's important to be wise and thoughtful about who you're telling everything to. And that is a big takeaway we get from Joseph, because Joseph just keeps going with this stuff. He did not pick up on their distaste for his dream talk. And so soon, we're at verse 9, Joseph had another dream. And again, he told his brothers about it. Listen, I have had another dream, he said. The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down low before me. And this time he told his dream to his father as well as to his brothers. But his father scolded him. Good parenting. Good try. Good effort there, Jacob. What kind of dream is that? He asked. Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow to the ground before you? This was a very insulting thing, that the hierarchy in the family here would be bowing down to the son. The presumption of what he's saying, it actually carries much more weight than we would give it today. It would have been very insulting. And so verse 11 tells us, though, but while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what the dreams meant. So his father's doing an effort here. Like, what kind of dream is that? Like, I think he's trying to tell him. He should have used exact words. He should have said, stop telling us about your dreams. Or just tell me. Stop telling your brothers. He didn't say that. He just kind of gives them a hard time about it. But he wondered what it meant. Why? Because Jacob knew that dreams and visions could be powerful. Jacob had his own visions and dreams from the Lord. Jacob had the ladder with the angels that go to heaven. Jacob had the encounters with the angel of the Lord that messed up his hip, and he walked with a limp. I mean, Jacob knew what it was to have meaningful, significant dreams and visions. So he's wondering if Joseph is in fact picked up this family trait and is also having meaningful visions and dreams, not just things that you see in when you're asleep, but actual meaningful visions and dreams, that this is carrying something deeper. He's wondering what this dream might mean and if this dream is from the Lord. But his brothers are not wondering that. They're just irritated that Joseph keeps talking like this all the time. And Joseph can't buy a vow. He just keeps doing it. So, verse 12, soon after this, Joseph's brothers went to pasture their father's flock at Shechem. When they had been gone for some time, Jacob said to Joseph, your brothers are pasturing the sheep at Shechem. Get ready, and I will send you to them. I'm ready to go, Joseph replied. Go and see how your brothers and the flocks are getting along, Jacob said. Then come back and bring me a report. So Jacob sent him on his way, and Joseph traveled to Shechem from their home in the valley of Hebron. When he arrived there, a man from the area noticed him wandering around the countryside. What are you looking for? He asked. I'm looking for my brothers, Joseph replied. Do you know where they are pasturing their sheep? Yes, the man told him. They have moved from here, but I heard them say, let's go down to Dothan. So Joseph followed his brothers to Dothan and found them there. Interesting part of the story. When Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance. As he approached, they made plans to kill him. Here comes the dreamer, they said. Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns. We can tell our father a wild animal has eaten him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams. But when Reuben heard of their schemes, he came to Joseph's rescue. Let's not kill him, he said. Why should we shed any blood? Let's just throw him in this empty cistern here in the wilderness. Then he'll die without us laying a hand on him. But Reuben was secretly planning to rescue Joseph and return him to his father. See, Reuben had a good plan. He wants to be the hero, and maybe he'll get the favor of his father if he's able to be the one who rescues and saves Joseph. He's got a good plan, and he also is trying to do the right thing, but not doing the right thing fully. What can we take away from that, girls? What can we learn here? Because attempting to do a slightly better thing as opposed to the actual right thing isn't going to hold up in the eyes of the Lord, and it's not going to play out well for you. It's not going to play out well for Reuben here. He's trying a little, but he's not trying his best. But at least he's convincing them that, wiping out their brother would be a terrible idea. He's coming up with a backup plan that's going to appease them in their anger. So we're on verse 23. So when Joseph arrived, his brothers ripped off his beautiful robe that he was wearing. Then they grabbed him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty. There was no water in it. Then, just as they were sitting down to eat, they looked up and saw a caravan of camels in the distance coming toward them. It was a group of Ishmaelite traders taking a load of gum, balm, and resin from Gilead down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain by killing our brother? We'd have to cover up the crime. Instead of hurting him, let's sell him to those Ishmaelite traders." After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. And all the brothers agreed. So when the Ishmaelites, who were Midianite traders, came by, Joseph's brothers pulled him out of the cistern and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. And the traders took him to Egypt. Pause. They came up with a good backup plan. They realized that murder was a terrible idea. So, there's a step up, a very tiny step up, because they still decided to sell their brother into slavery so they'll never have to see him again. Who knows what will become of him, but at least his blood won't be on our hands. So that is not them even trying to minutely do well. This is them trying to absolve themselves of their own wickedness. And they're failing at it. There's a lot. We could get really deep, but this is Sunday School for Adults Who Missed It, so I'm not going to get too deep into that. But you could process through that for a while. They're trying to reduce, there's murder, which is obvious to everyone, everywhere, bad, wrong, right? So let's not do the worst thing we could do. Let's just do a little less, and then it won't be on us. That's not how that works. So, it's still not the right thing. The less wrong thing is still a wrong thing. But they're trying to absolve themselves. And also get rid of the thing that they can't stand. That they don't want to deal with. This is not good. We're on verse 29. Sometime later, Reuben returned to get Joseph out of the cistern. When he discovered that Joseph was missing, he tore his clothes in grief, and then he went back to his brothers and lamented, "The boy is gone. What will I do now?" See, Reuben wasn't with them during the selling into slavery. Reuben wasn't with them when they made their backup plan. So he had his own backup plan, which has just now gotten destroyed. He went to go rescue Joseph, and Joseph was gone. And he is assuming that they have probably ended him or whatever. But that's what they do. They're very emotional, physically displaying emotional people. So he rips his clothes and he's, "Oh no, the boy is gone. What will I do now?" Because he is the oldest, and he does know that this is going to be a problem. He's going to be a responsibility, and he is going to have to be the one to tell his father. And even though they don't like it, they still love their dad. They don't like that Joseph's the favorite, but they love their dad, and they don't want him to be devastated, and they know that this is going to do it. Reuben knows that this is going to do it. Then the brothers killed a young goat and dipped Joseph's robe in its blood, and they sent the beautiful robe to their father. They sent. Notice it says they sent. They didn't go themselves. They were ashamed. That's what it's telling us. Read between the lines, friends. They sent the beautiful robe to their father with this message: "Look at what we found. Doesn't this robe belong to your son?" And their father recognized it immediately. "Yes," he said, "it is my son's robe. A wild animal must have eaten him." Joseph had clearly been torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his clothes and dressed himself in burlap. He mourned deeply for his son for a long time. His family all tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "I will go to my grave mourning for my son," he would say, and then he would weep. Meanwhile, the Midianite traders arrived in Egypt, where they sold Joseph to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Potiphar was the captain of the palace guard. So we'll get back to what's going on with Joseph. We're hearing about what's going on with the brothers and the family that has just completely betrayed him. This is what I'm saying, friends. When I'm like, life is unfair, this young boy, because remember, he's much younger than the rest of them, and he's telling them about his dreams, and he likes being the favorite child. I'm pretty confident I would describe Joseph as a little naive, because I do not think that he really fully understands their contempt for him, or perhaps he would have tried to keep his distance. I think he's just that kid who's like, everybody likes me, everybody, I have that picture in my head anyway. I could be wrong. In any case, he's, because he's still trying to hang out with them. He's still going to check in on them. "Hi, guys. Just coming to check in on you so I can report back to Dad." buy a vow, dude. But in any case, he certainly doesn't fear them or think that he should be cautious in approaching them. And they are so infuriated that they're plotting the end of him. And so, I mean, it takes a special person to even just be like, oh, well, we'll get rid of him. Well, I guess that would make us look pretty bad. So let's not do that. Let's just throw him in this cistern, which is basically an empty well. It's like a hole in the ground. It's an empty. The well doesn't have, the cistern doesn't have any water in it right now. It's an empty well. Okay, like let's just leave him down in there, and whatever happens to him happens. And then I mean, it's like they're divulging this plan. They're like, well, that's probably not a good idea. And then they're like, that still kind of puts the blood on our hands, but we could sell him. Like that's a good backup plan. That's a good way to get rid of this person that's bothering you and your family. Things were different then, friends. Still, all bad ideas. Everyone is sad. Everyone is hurt. They have to live with this secret for the rest of their lives. So they think that they are going to live with this secret for the rest of their lives. They can never let their father know. They have to let their father believe that he is dead. And it has changed. Grief will do that to people. It has changed who Jacob is. He was, I will mourn for him for the rest of my life. He is a mess. That was clearly his favorite child. Even though we shouldn't have favorite children, that's ridiculous. But he did. He didn't have any problem letting them all know. So there's a lot of things we can take away. When we're looking at our lives and talking about unfair things, I don't know. Maybe you come from some rough families. I don't know how many of your families ever sold you. That's pretty difficult thing to live with. I mean, I think Joseph is just very confused right now because, like I said, I don't think he even realized how much disdain that they had for him, as that he just approached them excitedly. He let them know about his dreams. I don't think he had any idea that he needed to be cautious and mindful. But Joseph is going to keep that just that strength of character. Like, he's always confident in who he is, which is why he's like not even noticing how the people around him are. And as much bad stuff happens to Joseph as a result of this, I still think that it is a wonderful example for us. I'm like trying to be more like that, if I can be honest. I'm very aware of what people around me think, and it does make me react a certain way. It does make me more cautious. But I think I'm learning something different from the story in the life of Joseph. Because like I'm telling you, I mean, as we're talking, I'm even saying, maybe he should have kept some things to himself. Maybe you don't need to share everything with everybody because it's going to have a bad result. Yes, it does have a bad result, but God is going to still use that for good. Joseph's not the one who's doing the bad things. He might not be making the wisest choices. He might not be being the most discerning, but he is always clear and confident on who he is. He puts the absolute faith in God and in the dreams and visions that God has given him. Like, he's like so confident that these have deep meaning and that he has been chosen by God, that he is eager to share this with the people around him who are clearly very jealous of it. It doesn't even impact him in any way because he is so confident in who he is. He's not paying attention to who everyone around him is. I actually think that's a good quality, even though it had bad consequences for Joseph. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Because God's still going to use this disaster for everyone's good. Like, spoiler alert, okay? know that we're getting a happy ending here. But it's some time away and it's going to come with a lot of trials. But all those trials are going to make Joseph like a really incredible, important person in history for a long time. And it's going to bless his entire family. So there's a much bigger takeaway that I'm really trying to crack right now with you guys. Because I'm saying maybe we need to be so confident in the things that God told us that it really shouldn't matter. We maybe just have to continue in that confidence regardless of circumstances, regardless of who's around you. And you just got to keep speaking that truth as Joseph did, even when it comes with bad consequences. I don't know. So we're at the end of chapter 27. We're going to skip chapter 28 because it's a sidebar story. It's Judah's story. Please read it for yourself. It's a little sketchy of the things that go on in this story. Judah and Tamar, who Tamar is his daughter-in-law. He breaks promises to her. It's got a lot of cultural history and the way that they handled things in marriages and things like that. And so it's an odd story, but it is not part of Joseph's story. It's just this sidebar because this is right after this all happens. Judah leaves home and goes to another territory, and then it's the story of what happens to him over a period of time and things he deals with. So I think the only important thing to Joseph's story, which is who we're talking about today, for this, is that right after all this happens, Judah leaves. So I think it's showing like his own guilt, and he's still going to make a ton of mistakes. He's going to realize he makes bad choices and doesn't do righteous things, and so that you're going to get a part of his story. I'm going to skip over that, but girl, read your Bible. We're going to go on to chapter 39 because we are focusing on Joseph specifically for this today. So chapter 39, because that's where it ended. 37 ended with Joseph being purchased by Potiphar, and Potiphar is like the head of Pharaoh's armies. And so he's a big deal. So that's kind of important. So this is where we can see the beginning of God's favor showing up. Even though, again, you're just you can't look at the whole circumstance of like being, Joseph. Yeah, no, his life is different now. That's what happened. So we got to see what God does with it. You got to work with the cards you're dealt sometimes. So his life is very different. He is now sold into slavery. But he is sold to a very important person, which is going to matter because it's going to have an impact for Joseph for a period of time. So, Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, and he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was the captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. And that is our scripture for the week, because that is the thing that I want to understand and imitate the most. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. I want the kind of favor of God that he is with me and I will succeed at everything I do, that I would be prosperous. Some versions say he was prosperous in everything he does. And so much so that Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. I mean, think about what a testimony that is. It's specific, right? Like he didn't just say, oh, wow, this guy's really knowledgeable or really wise. It says he noticed and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success. So, I mean, that's ministry life right there. That's being an example, being a light. He's representing the Lord. And Potiphar recognizes the favor of God on Joseph. And Potiphar makes a good move. This pleased Potiphar, so he soon made Joseph his personal attendant and put him in charge of his entire household and everything he owned, because he recognized, hey, God is with this guy, blessing everything he does, and I would like everything I have to be blessed, so I need to elevate him and move him up. And I think that should be happening for all of us. So what can we learn from Joseph? That he had carried the favor of God in such a way that everything he did was successful. Well, I just told you. I might have jumped ahead. I may be a little scattered today. I'm sorry. But I think that's our takeaway, or at least that's where I'm trying to get. Joseph really knew who he was. He carried an integrity and a certainty that God had called him and chosen him and that he was favored. He knew what it was like to be a favored child. So I think he also knew he was a favored child of God, not just of his father. And he was happy to share that. And I think he walked in that real confidence. And that's why everything he did was successful. I think that's our takeaway, where we can mimic the life of Joseph. It's really important to walk with integrity and serve. I want to talk about Joseph's life to this point and how we might have been different, how I might have been different. This is depressing, right? Your family, who you love, who you think for some reason is very supportive of you, but clearly isn't, completely betrays you in like a terrible way. Like at one point they want to end you. And then they like, oh, well, let's just get rid of you and never see you again. This is depressing. Like, I can't imagine anything worse. I've had a lot of betrayals and hurts, not like Joseph's. No one ever got rid of me. So, not in this way. We get sad when somebody unfriends us or unfollows us on social media. This is a lot more serious, friends. So, this is an incredible betrayal. And you can think about what kind of reaction you might have to a serious betrayal, especially one of this size. Like, I mean, how many of us are going to sit around and mope and be like, woe is me. God, I don't know why you let this happen to me. I don't know how any of my dreams are going to come true now. Does that sound like something that maybe sounds more realistic or on par? What are we already learning from Joseph? He's clearly not sitting around and moping, because everything he's doing is successful. What's that tell you already? He's doing things. He's working. He's still carrying his integrity. He's still showing up and being who he is, even in these terrible circumstances. He's not poking around wondering how this happened to him and where's the promise of God on his life, because he shouldn't be in this situation. Nope, still just being himself. Still just probably, I'm guessing based on this, that he is still walking with incredible integrity and still working hard. That's why everything he touches is successful. Such an example for us, right? Like, I want everything I do to be successful. So I think the takeaway here is that you really got to own who you are and know that God is with you. And if you just do that and you show up every day and you give it your all, then you will win the favor of the people around you, and everything you touch will be blessed. Everything you do will be successful in the way that the people around you can see it and acknowledge it and want more of it. And so it works out pretty well for him so far, that he is successful in everything he does. We're going to keep going. I know I'm harping on it, girls, because that's just like such a big takeaway for me. From the day that Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property, the Lord began to bless Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. All his household affairs ran smoothly, and his crops and livestock flourished. So Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. With Joseph, he didn't have to worry about a thing, except for what kind of food to eat. Everything was taken care of. I think that all of our bosses should feel this way about us, right? Like, everything we touch is so blessed. They just want to keep promoting you and elevating you, because their business is blessed because you're there. Their business, I always say this is very true. My husband's always worked a job. I say his company is blessed and flourishes because he is there, because the hand of the Lord is on him. I completely believe that. I think that's true for all of us, so long as we walk in the fact that we confidence of knowing that truth, knowing that promise, and also doing our job with integrity. Joseph is not moping around. He is not depressed. He is not woe is meing. He is showing up confident in the promises of God and the favor of God. And God is blessing Potiphar for Joseph's sake. Not because Potiphar is good. There's nothing about Potiphar that this leads us to believe anything is good about him. However, God is blessing him for Joseph's sake. That should be happening for all of us. I just want to say that. That's very important to me. But we're going to keep reading because, not everything works out for long periods of time. And I told you, Joseph has a lot of unfair things happen. So when you think about how unfair things happen in your life, I want you to remember Joseph, because we're about to come in another part of Joseph's story, highly unfair. Joseph was very handsome and a well-built young man. That's not the unfair part. And Potiphar's wife soon began to take notice and began to look at him lustfully. "Come and sleep with me," she demanded. But Joseph refused. "Look," he told her, "my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held nothing back from me except for you, because you're his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God." But she kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day, and he refused to sleep with her every day. This woman, and we have to assume, right, that this woman has to also be beautiful and well kept, because Potiphar is a big deal. So it's got to be you'd be pretty confident that he's going to have a very attractive, well kept wife, and so this, I'm going to say, very pretty woman is constantly throwing herself at him. And again, we're seeing Joseph with incredible integrity. He's obviously grown in some wisdom too. And he is like, this would not be worth it. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I am not going to do the wrong thing, even though you're bugging me day after day and you're probably beautiful and I could probably get away with it. Like, see where some people's minds would go, right? Joseph, no, never went down that rabbit hole. That's the rabbit hole I think one of his brothers might have gone down based on the rabbit hole that they already went down. But he walks with integrity. He's like, absolutely not. First of all, I have it good here, and this would be a sin against God, and absolutely not. And day after day, the Bible tells us, she keeps on pressuring him, but he refused. And he even tried to keep out of her way as much as possible. Verse 11. One day, however, no one else was around when he went in to do his work, and she came and grabbed him by his cloak. Again, the robe is always messing with him. Demanding, "Come on, sleep with me." I'm sure it's better in other translations, really, the dialogue here. Joseph tore himself away, but he left his cloak in her hand as he ran from the house. I mean, he is doing everything he can, right? He's like, no, oh my God, this woman. And he is running away from the house. When she saw that she was holding his cloak and that he had fled, she called out to her servants. Soon all the men came running. "Look," she said, "my husband has brought this Hebrew slave here to make fools of us. He came into my room to rape me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream, he ran outside and got away, but he left his cloak behind." And she kept the cloak with her until her husband came home. But she told him her story. "That Hebrew slave you brought into our house tried to come in and fool around with me," she said. "But when I screamed, he ran away, leaving his cloak with me." Let's just talk about how incredibly unfair this is. This is the exact opposite of what happened. The exact opposite. He has been trying to resist her for days, maybe longer. We have no idea. A long time. But this is where we get the phrase, how hath no fury like a woman scorned. This woman could not handle the rejection, and she decided to get revenge in the worst possible way. And she is claiming something that never happened. Not even close. She is claiming some of the worst type of action here. And Joseph did the exact opposite. He walked with integrity in everything he did. The fact that the people around her and around him that had been in this household and witnessed whatever different behaviors, right? Because this woman's got to be a special kind of pill. This probably isn't her first time where she's acted out of sorts. And everybody's been watching Joseph this whole time be wildly successful and walk in integrity. So the fact that the people around them would even believe this, the fact that Potiphar would even believe this, is very unfair. everything about this story is incredibly unfair. Remember Joseph's story the next time you feel like life is unfair, because another bad thing's about to happen, but good things are just going to keep getting better for him, even in disaster. But disaster comes first, friends, and that's where we're at. Verse 19. Potiphar was furious when he heard his wife's story about how Joseph had treated her. So he took Joseph and threw him in prison, where the king's prisoners were held, and there he remained. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison, and showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. Before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners and over everything that happened in the prison. The warden had no more worries because Joseph took care of everything. The Lord was with him and caused him to succeed in everything he did. Over and over. We're going to stop there for today. We're going to pick up with the rest of Joseph's incredible story next time. But I just want to rehash, favor doesn't always look like fairness. And I even want to say, sometimes the prosperity preachers, they talk about the prosperity gospel, the people who talk about all the good things that God has planned for you, and they get a bad rap. But I want to talk about, this is what prosperity looks like sometimes, friends. Prosperity doesn't mean everything in your life is going to go smoothly. It just means when the bad things happen, God will turn it around for good. That this isn't actually God's divine plan for all these bad things to happen. That's not how it works. God has an end result, and there's a journey that's going to happen to get there. And it's not the way we want it to go. I just promise you that, actually. I can promise you that life will, in fact, be unfair. And that bad things will happen. Because that's where our character develops. Because that's where God can show up in our lives. I can tell you that walking with the integrity and faithfulness will always have fruit. Will always have a blessing for you, will always be your best solution. So even in the dark places, right? Again, we're going to conclude that Joseph did not fall into a deep depression and cry in the corner of the prison as, oh, woe is me. He certainly didn't rail against God of, God, you're so unfair. You weren't here for me. Where are you? None of that. None of that. This bad stuff keeps happening to Joseph, and who is he? Secure in his integrity and character, and we know that because the people around him keep putting him in leadership positions, and everything he does is blessed and favored by God. Why would God continually show up and favor him? Because Joseph continually keeps his integrity. I think that we can take away a lot of life lessons about the way we handle things from the life of Joseph. Because, friends, he went through worse stuff than I did. So sometimes things are unfair, and I still get upset about it. But I will like to learn. I plan to learn from this point that when those bad things happen, I'm still going to be who I know God created me to be. I'm still going to walk in integrity and be the same as if those things happened or didn't happen. I'm still going to be confident in the things that God has promised me are going to happen because he said that they would. I don't know how this is going to play into it, but clearly it's going to because God keeps his word. I mean, I'm just seeing Joseph as such an incredible example of who we're meant to be and how we're meant to carry our integrity. And we're going to get a lot more out of his story when we follow up in part 2. But I want you to think on these things this week. Favor doesn't depend on fairness. Faithfulness unlocks fruitfulness because Joseph was continually faithful. And so his life was continually fruitful. Went through bad seasons, but he didn't let it impact him. And he was still blessed no matter where he was. He was blessed in his father's house because he was loved and favored by his father. He was blessed even after being sold into slavery and being put in charge of his master's house and everything that he had. And he was still highly favored and walked in favor in that setting, in that scenario. And then he was thrown into prison. And he still walked in favor and integrity and blessing and lived fruitfully in that circumstance, as fruitfully as possible in the circumstance he was in. He was put in charge of everybody in the prison. He had the favor of the warden. Things were going as well for him as they could be in the circumstance for which that he was in. And that is a valuable example for us to learn from. So I hope that you have a lot of things to take away this week. I have a prayer and some affirmations for you guys that's in the show notes and also on our blog at 522 Gals that you might want to check out, that kind of pairs with today's episode. And until next time, when we pick up more of the story of Joseph, girl, read your Bible.